Advice is tricky. Advice is super tricky when you're getting it from every angle. You've got friends, you've got family, maybe you're on social media, maybe you're on YouTube like myself, and you get tons of advice comments. But is it really good advice? Is it really good advice that's gonna work for you? So let's get into it. If you are new to my channel, welcome. My name is Amanda. I am 35 years old. I live in the state of Oregon and I'm on a low income. I get tons of advice. It's almost like I get on YouTube and it becomes the advice column of the year where everybody has advice for me. Everybody has something to tell me that they wish that I could have, would have, should have done, right? I get advice from friends, from family, and sometimes that advice can be a dumpster fire, especially if we're talking things finances. So, how many of you have watched Dave Ramsey? I've watched Dave Ramsey. I currently watch Dave Ramsey. He is one of my favorite financial gurus on the internet. He has helped me out a tremendous amount when it comes to budgeting, finances, and getting my stuff together. However, his advice doesn't always work for me. It doesn't always work because I'm not that person on the phone line who is making $100,000 a year and is making terrible financial decisions. Buying cars I can't afford, living in a house I can't afford, and spending money that I just don't have. I don't have that kind of income. I'm not living on $100,000 a year. I don't even live off $50,000 a year. My combined income with my husband is around $45,000 a year. That's it. That's it. That means that we make a little over $20,000 a piece if we were to be working regular jobs, hourly jobs in food, restaurant, fast food, retail, low income jobs. And that's the kind of job that I would be eligible to get. A lot of people love to give advice quicker than they actually know the situation. If you have that one family member who has given you tons of advice and it has been a dumpster fire every single time you get advice from this person, stop. You can love this family member and still not take their advice. How many of you have that particular person who has been like, and Amanda, I think that if I was you, I would do X, Y, and Z. And, you know, maybe if you quit driving for a living and got an hourly job, you could probably make it and buy a house and do all the things that you want to do in your life. How many people have that family member? Maybe it's not your family member and it's your friend, and you're getting terrible advice. If you could just stop spending on food and you live on a beans and rice diet. This is what I heard on a channel this morning when I was watching AF Budgets. I will leave her linked down in the description box down below. She does a lot of great budgeting on her very low income. She's lower income than I am. And honestly, she does really well. She does really well, but somebody suggested as a budget bestie for her to live on a beans and rice diet so she could get out of debt. Does anybody really live on a beans and rice diet? Do they really? We hear Dave talk about it. We hear people talk about it on budgeting channels. We hear it all the time on financial channels. Do you know what it's really like to live off of beans and rice diet? Because I have not ever done it. I have truthfully never sat here and said, okay, I'm going to get my beans and rice out and I'm going to make a meal plan on beans and rice. And I know a lot of people are like, that's extreme, Amanda. That's not what they're talking about. Well, you're asking someone to quit buying standard groceries. That's what you're asking them to do for an extended amount of time. If you sat down with your finances and you look at how much it costs for you to live, and then take away whatever it costs to live from your yearly income, how much money do you really have left? How much money do you have to put away? How much money do you think you can actually save? What can you do to get out of debt? How long would it take you? If it doesn't work for you, maybe it's time to think of a little side hustle. And I'm not talking a side hustle you have to do every day. I'm not saying to go out and do DoorDash. Yeah, I did good on DoorDash the other day, but does that mean I'm going to sit here and give you advice to take your beater rig out and do DoorDash and put thousands of miles on your car every single year? No, I'm not. I have gotten terrible advice from tons of people in the realm of financial advice. And I'm going to tell you one of the biggest ones. I was homeless. I was living in my car, and I got involved in a program for homeless people that have been homeless long term, all the things. And this person sat down with me. I was working a fast food job, and you guys are going to laugh at this because it's good. It's rich with lots of bad advice. I'm working a fast food job, one of the biggest chains, the Golden Arches of fast food. And this person sits down with me and says, well, you have an eviction, Miss Amanda. You have an eviction, and that's going to be really hard for us to find an apartment for you. Well, duh. I got evicted many years ago because I couldn't afford to pay my rent. And I had to choose between feeding my family and keeping the lights on or paying my rent. I had to put gas in my car so I could go to work. Normal things I would spend money on. I'm not going out buying, $100 pair of jeans. I'm not going and buying Coach purses. I am just trying to live, right? This is my mentality. And I think to myself, this person's about to give me some advice. This is the advice I need. This is the treasure I need to keep my life going, and I don't want to be homeless anymore, and I want to get back inside. And she says, let's pull your credit report. If you go to annualcreditreport.com, yada, 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 pull your report. So I pull my report, and she's like, wow, you owe like $10,000 to apartments and bills and things you didn't pay, and some of them have been in collections for a while. You should pay those off. Well, I'm working the Golden Arches, honey, and I only make a certain amount a year, and if I'm homeless, I'm not billless. A lot of people have that misconception. They think homeless, this person doesn't have a phone, they don't pay for insurance or gas or drive a car, they don't have to buy work clothes, they're not doing anything with life. Well, I was a working homeless person with a phone bill, car insurance, gas, a car to drive. I had to maintain that car, all the things. I had to buy myself food, and if you're homeless, I hate to tell you this, but beans and rice diet ain't gonna work. You know why? Because you have nowhere to cook. You're not cooking in an apartment. You're not going to do regular grocery shopping. I've spent on an average anywhere between $8 to $12 a meal. Why? Because I had nowhere to cook it. I had nowhere to cook. I was going to go live off a cup of noodle. I mean, you could try it, but I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to get sick of it and you're going to feel sick from it. And I was a working person. I wanted to portray that I was not homeless because I wanted to keep my jobs. So, long story short, she tries to tell me all this wonderful advice on how to pay down my debt. If you did this, if you did this, if you did this, if you did this, okay, well, I don't make that kind of income. I didn't have $10,000 just hanging around. So her advice didn't work for me. Her advice took me 11 months to fully accomplish. 11 months is a long time. She wanted me to do it in a matter of weeks. I was like, I can't do that. And I left feeling bummed out because her advice made me feel like crap. Her advice made me feel like crap. How many of you have tried to go for a home loan? You can qualify for a loan and your credit's decent, but you're not going to make enough to get that home loan that you're looking for. I don't qualify at this current time right now with an hourly job that I make $14 an hour. I would not qualify if I was making $14 an hour to buy a home. I wouldn't qualify, wouldn't make enough money. And people, when you go talk about things like finances to people like mortgage lenders, banks, financial advisors, they're putting you on that tier of $100,000 when you're making $30,000. Big difference, big difference. Maybe you're like myself and my husband, and together you only make a certain amount of money. I've gotten bad personal advice from friends. I've gotten really terrible advice sometimes in comments on this channel. Maybe you should just quit YouTube and it's taking you 15 minutes a day to make a video, and then you have to edit it for another 30 minutes and then you post it. So that's an hour of your time every single day that you could be making money. Do you know if I'm making money? Do you know? There's a lot of ways you can weed out bad advice. Weeding out bad advice is easy. Take your own advice first. If you sit there and delegate your ducks, your income, your budget, and you say, I'm doing the best I can with what I've got because it's all I have to work with, and then somebody comes along and says, I'm going to smash your advice that you're giving yourself, and you're not doing enough, and your beans and rice diet is what you need to live off of. I watch many cooking channels. I like cooking. I love to cook. I watch many people on a low income cook all the time. I never see anybody on a true beans and rice diet. Never. Where they're like, here's my staple of beans and rice and I'm going to add a little bit to it and that's how I'm going to eat. I'm going to buy myself a 15-pound bag of beans and rice. Beans 15 pounds, rice 15 pounds. And this is what I'm going to eat on for 6 months. People aren't doing that. People are not on a beans and rice diet. There are people out there on a low income and they're shopping. Who cares? It's their money. They get to choose. And then when they look at their debt and say, I'm in debt to my eyeballs, but I went shopping, they know they made that decision. You don't need to make it for them. You don't need to give advice. You don't need to gain advice. Weed it out. Take the advice as it is. Yeah, that person gave me advice. Does it work for me? Probably not. And that's okay. And it's okay for you to not be up to somebody else's standards. We're not on this earth to live up to somebody else's standards. I'm not going to live my short life worrying about what other people think about me. I'm not. If I did, then I wouldn't be on social media. I wouldn't be taking my own advice, and I would be crying in the shower every single day about my finances, debt, not being able to afford to do X, Y, and Z, may not be able to buy a house, I might not be able to buy a car, and my life would be a dumpster fire. I would be super unhappy with my life. If you guys saw my live, if you see any of my lives with my husband where we are silly and we're living it up and we're living for here and now, that's what it's about. It's not about the advice you get from somebody else. They don't live in your realm. They're not in your sanctuary. They're not living in your house, in your shoes, working your job. If you want to quit that crap job so you can go get working, and if that makes you happy like myself, do it. Do it. I make more doing this than I ever would working an hourly job. You guys saw it. I make $1,600 a month off of my income. I can't live like that. It's okay for you to be like, I can't do it anymore. I'm not taking any more advice. I'm going to start thinking for my own self, and I get to choose. And maybe Dave Ramsey would tell me, Miss Amanda, you're not making enough money. You're not making enough, so you can't do the baby steps. How many of you have actually watched him and he says that? That's what he would get. That would be his advice to me. I'm not making enough to get myself out of debt, and I'm not making enough to get myself into a home, and I'm not making enough to really live. But I can only do what I can with what I've got. I'm not a genie. I don't have the ability to snap my fingers and have new situations happen for me. I make them for myself. You make them for you. Don't let anybody else beat you down because of their very, very detrimental advice. Nobody lives off beans and rice, baby. Nobody living off beans and rice in this household. So do what you can with what you got, and I'll see you guys in the next one. And if you're taking advice off of the internet, take it in little tiny bits, because you don't know what this other person's living like. Bye, guys.